Ruin My Childhood.
You're listening to Ruin My Childhood, the podcast where we decide if some things are better left in the past. I'm Kat.
I'm Mike.
Today, we're talking about Zoolander.
Zoolander.
Oof. I watched this a lot.
I watched this all the time in middle school.
Yeah, this was on heavy rotation. I'm not sure if we owned it. I think we might have.
I definitely had it on DVD, and you and I watched it together several times when we first started dating.
Yeah, we did. Oof.
I watched this movie all the time.
That was totally our movie watching wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Dumb comedies.
Dumb comedies, for sure.
Because that was kind of your go-to
that
era.
I loved Ben Stiller, Will Ferrell,
Anchorman.
in this time. Adam Sandler movies. To be honest
all
with
that
you,
dumb stuff.
if I'm talking from my true heart of hearts, I have very low expectations going into this one. I feel like this is an episode where our childhood will be ruined. Because I've gone back in the last couple of years, even on like Remake Rewind, we covered The Longest Yard, and I loved that movie when I was in high school. And it was awful. And
so much disappointment. I mean, I've always known that they were dumb, but they were like your favorite movies, so we watched them a lot.
They were dumb, but they were
Zoolander,
funny, but the humor doesn't hold up anymore.
I think Zoolander, it might just be a cut above. It kind of depends on how much Will Ferrell there is.
Oh, well, Will Ferrell's Magatsu, the villain of the movie, so he's pretty prevalent.
It depends on like how much Will Ferrell yelling there is.
I'm pretty sure he yells every single one of his lines in this movie.
He was just obnoxious. I love him in Elf, but everything else I can completely do without his performance.
I used to love his movies. I still like Anchorman. But I watched Talladega Nights recently. I got about 25 minutes in and had to shut it off.
I used to tolerate it a lot better than I do now.
Yeah. Anything in particular you remember about the movie?
Oh gosh, Zoolander?
Yeah. That's what we're talking about.
So much stuff. Like him not being an Ambi Turner.
Can't turn left.
Of course, all of his looks.
Blue Steel.
God, there's so many good one-liners, though.
Gray.
Well, and not even, like, good one-liners, but things that are just so stupid and funny that you can't help but remember them because they made you laugh so many times.
And, I mean, obviously we're going to watch the movie, but I feel like as dumb as it was, there was also some really, like, clever wordplay and some clever jokes in there as well, mixed in with all the stupid stuff. But I mean, of course he only has the one look, but what was my favorite? The School for Ants. I'll never forget that.
What is this? A school for ants? Or Center for Ants?
Center for Ants.
A Center for Ants?
And then,
it is.
God, I feel like this is something
really,
you and I
really
still
ridiculously good looking.
Quote all the time.
Yeah,
and I'm sure as we go through it, I know there's a quote that I probably use daily from this movie, and I can't think of it right now because it's just part of my like repertoire now.
Right.
But yeah, this one was really popular with our listeners. We got a lot of comments, and we actually got a couple of voicemails as well.
Oh.
So, would you like to do comments first or voicemails first?
I want to hear the voicemails. That's more exciting.
So we have two. One did not...
There's so many good bits on Zoolander. I love how they have David Bowie for the War on Way. I love how they say about the ants, the Center for Ants. I love how they're like, I'm a merman, Dad. Merman. Yeah, there's just so many good little, like, skits and jabs, like just making fun of people that gets in the fashion industry that kind of are on the bright side. But I love it. One of my all-time favorite movies. Love it.
All right, so we didn't get a name on that, but thank you for calling in. If you want to leave a message with us, it's 64 MDXpods 1 is the phone number. If you don't like that and you want to know what the actual number is, it's 646-397-6371. 64 MDXpods 1. So thank you for that. I agree. This movie does have a lot of great one-liners. The Center for Ants is super famous. Everybody knows that part of this movie, even if they haven't seen it. Like, if you say that, people know what you're talking about.
Yep, definitely. I think I honestly have a good feeling about this. The more I think about it, the more I have a good feeling. But yeah, maybe it could go either way.
This is Anthony here. Yeah, I just want to say I really love Zoolander. My favorite scene is when he's getting the massage and he's got to get that happy ending, you know. I love MDXpods.
Thanks, Anthony.
Was that you?
No, it was not me. I'm pretty sure it's one of my coworkers, and he was trying to like disguise his voice.
Well, thank you, whoever you are.
Well, it says Anthony, and I have a coworker named Anthony, so I'm pretty sure it's him, and he's just putting on a disguise.
That's funny.
I do remember, like, the spa scene. I don't remember a happy ending in this movie. I feel like that would put it out of the PG-13.
Yeah.
And put it into the R
I think
territory.
he's talking about the pitch tent that moves around.
I'll have to watch it. I don't remember that. I definitely remember he goes to, like, a spa, and that's where he gets his brainwashing, so I'm assuming it's in that little, like...
It's one of those horrifying moments that are burned into my subconscious. Like, as soon as he said it, I knew what it was. Yeah, it just has a lot of those weird moments.
Oh, I do remember it. And it, like, moves around, like, left and right. Like, it dodges as, like, the guy's trying to massage it.
We recently saw a movie where it seemed to have the same character who is the DJ at the runway show.
Yeah, it was Tropic Thunder.
The dreads.
Tropic Thunder.
Was that the same character?
Yeah, it's the same guy.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's the same actor.
Was he playing David the
Thoreau?
same character?
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same guy.
So that exists in the same universe.
As Tropic Thunder? Well, they're both written and directed by Ben Stiller.
I just think it's funny that he's, like, created a bad comedy universe.
Tropic
nice
Thunder
touch.
was good. We watched that recently. It was still really good.
Oh, okay. Tropic Thunder is so bad, but it's so stupidly funny.
No,
I still like it.
The characters are
I still
great.
like it so much.
It's
terrible.
Dumb, but it's good.
It's like a guilty pleasure for me, I think.
It's not even a guilty pleasure for me. I just love that movie.
All right, should we watch Zoolander?
No, we got comments, too.
Oh, that's right. I'm so tired.
This is a big movie. People love this one, so I'll give you a second to pull them up. But Puerto Rican Boy 16, am I allowed to say that?
What?
It says, when everybody saw Derek's new look called Magnum and saved the Prime Minister of Malaysia from Mugatsu.
The Prime Minister of Micronesia.
Micronesia. Claymation.
Okay. Jesus FTW said,
For the win.
What is this? A center for ants?
It says Annie's.
How can we be expected to teach children to learn how to read if they can't even fit inside the building?
He's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Sondo World just posted 2 emojis of chili peppers.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what it means. Maybe it's just me really, really hot. I don't know.
Puneet.tv said blue steel, kissy emoji, slate emoji, but he misspelled steel. It's the wrong steel.
Yeah, he did it like you're stealing home plate.
God, Puneet.
Mad Warble T said, I am very, very good looking. That's a misquote. It's I am really, really ridiculously good looking.
I think that's Mad Warblet.
Oh, yeah, it might be.
Like a piglet, but cooler.
Oh, is a warble a thing?
No, but I'm assuming. Just, from the word structure.
It could be
unless it's French and it's Mad Warblet.
Mad Warblet.
Warblet.
Well, anyway, thanks to everyone who commented. We figured this would be an episode that people would be excited about us covering because this came out in our formative years. I was 13 or 12 going on 13 when this movie came out.
Oof.
This movie came out...
Very formative years.
Like less than 2 weeks after 9/11.
Oh, geez.
This movie did not do well in theaters, and Ben Stiller has like gone on the record to say like he blames 9/11.
It was definitely a thing.
Yeah.
It changed everything. Wow, that's so weird to think about this coming out right after 9/11. It's no wonder, like, when you think of it in that scope that we really gravitated toward these dumb comedies, because it's so just completely not reality.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense now that I think about it. Oh, this is getting deep. We should just go watch it.
Yep.
His name is Zoolander. Derek Zoolander. International male supermodel. But perhaps the world's only hope of stopping a sinister assassination plot and still find time to help the children.
I give you the Derek Zoolander Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good.
What is this?
A center for ants?
How can children learn how to read if they can't even fit inside the... Ben Stiller.
Oh!
Owen Wilson.
Pop and lock it, fool!
Will Ferrell.
They're breakdance fighting.
Christine Taylor.
When I was in 7th grade, I became bulimic.
You can read minds.
Okay, we are back from watching Zoolander, and I don't want to give everything away right at the beginning.
No.
I think you should do a summary.
So
for
summary,
us first.
Basically in a nutshell, Derek Zoolander took the world by storm in 5 syllables. Derek Zoolander. And he's the male model of the year, like 3 years running. He's the #1 male model. Just everybody knows who he is. Celebrities love him. Regular people love him. He's so hot
right now.
He's so hot. Natalie Portman wants to date him, but he's almost too good looking, so it's kind of a deterrent. And he's super stupid, super dumb, and he goes to accept an award that he didn't win because Hansel, who's so hot right now,
he's so hot
won
right now.
male model of the year. So at this point, he becomes a laughingstock in the male model community. Meanwhile, Mugatsu is looking to train an assassin to kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia because he just passed a minimum wage law, and he outlawed child labor, of course, which the fashion industry heavily uses. So they brainwashed Derek to kill the Prime Minister, and they kind of have to unravel the mystery and find out how to stop it, and hilarious antics ensue.
Okay, so you mentioned Natalie Portman wants to date him. There are like, I don't know, 25 random cameos in this movie?
So many.
Everyone's in this movie. It is insane and hilarious and a
as
little
many as we can
horrifying.
right
Okay, so Natalie Portman.
Donald Trump and Melania, unfortunately.
Which was nauseatingly disgusting.
You look at Melania in this, and she looks like she actually likes him still.
She does. It was before they were married.
Yeah, this was
she had to bring home the bacon.
You had...
Oh God, that works on so many levels for him.
Lance Bass. You had, what's the guy from Limp Bizkit's name?
Fred Durst.
Fred Durst was in
Ew.
it. You had Christina Aguilera while she was still with Gavin Rossdale.
No, you were just thinking about Christina Aguilera because of the Eminem
not
song
Christina,
line.
Gwen Stefani.
Yes,
Gwen Stefani and Gavin
Rossdale.
Rossdale. You had Fabio. You had who's your boyfriend?
Lenny Kravitz.
Lenny Kravitz.
Yes.
You had Billy
My OG
Zane,
boyfriend.
David Bowie.
This was when Billy Zane was trying to figure out like his new look.
Right, because he was bald. Speaking of Billy Zane, I really want to cover The Phantom soon. But going back to this one, God, there was so many of a bunch of fashion designers. You had all the people from like E! News. You had who else? There's countless people. There's some Paris Hilton had her. That's so hot.
Everybody who was big at the time was in this movie.
movie.
And it's kind of amazing when you think about the star value of each of these people at the time this movie came out. Like, how were they able to get all of them? Was there something else that the big names attached to this had just done that was incredibly successful? Like, I mean, there has to be a story there.
You had Ben Stiller was riding high on Meet the Parents, had come out a couple years prior.
Oh God, which was kind of like the birth of this wave of absurdist humor.
Right. So
it's almost like Red Skelton level absurdity in many ways.
What's Red Skelton?
What? Like very slapsticky. And just silly. It was really silly.
Okay. I'll have to look up Red Skelton.
I mean,
Skeleton.
Of course they're not the same, but like I'm just talking about the intensity
of
how ridiculous this humor is.
Right. David Duchovny.
Oh yeah.
Big role in this one. Very quick, but very prominent and important.
You freaking idiot.
But yeah, I mean, I was laughing. I don't even want to say I was laughing throughout this movie, but I was quoting it throughout. Like
it's
pretty
burned
much
into your head.
I pretty
all
much
these
knew
lines.
this movie word for word.
Yeah, I did too, which was really surprising to me.
Because I haven't watched this movie in probably 7 to 10 years.
Right. I think what caught me most off guard about this film was how young everyone was in all the cameos.
Right. Natalie Portman was like, I mean, this came out in 2001, so she was still in the midst of doing the Star Wars movies. She was still going to college. She was like 19, 20 years old.
Right. And I think part of that is because so many of the big stars of this film, they put out a really... How do I want to phrase this? They put out a lot of films all within this genre in a very short period of time. So even though I haven't really seen them in that much since then, they're sort of burned into my head the way they are in this movie. They aged like a little bit throughout the run of the arc of that comedy wave.
Right.
And now we haven't seen them in a while. At least I haven't seen them in a while. So all these other celebrities, we've watched them age this entire time. Whereas like Will Ferrell and Ben Stiller is just sort of perpetually, late 40s.
Right. Well, you have...
So it makes this huge contrast where you're like, wow, Natalie Portman looks like she's 17. And then Ben Stiller looks like Ben Stiller.
Yeah, he looks pretty much the same. He's got some gray in his hair now, but essentially he looks the same.
Right.
What's crazy is this movie also kind of set up the Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson craze, because they were doing movies left and right. So they had done Meet the Parents just a couple years prior, but then they had this, and they had Starsky and Hutch. They had, what was it, Night at the Museum, multiple versions of that.
And you kind of forget just how many dumb comedies Owen Wilson did, because he then went on to have a really diverse career after.
Well,
maybe not all of them blockbusters, but like a lot of diversity there, and he's actually really good. Come on. Sorry, Wendy's Bacon Fest. Turn off your phone.
No, I was looking at something on IMDb and an ad popped up.
This is Wendy's Bacon Fest. Anyway. I forgot what I was saying.
You were saying that Owen Wilson had a diverse cast, and you're right. Actually, in this movie, particularly, Owen Wilson actually kept his hair long for a long time and had long hair as an actor for quite a while. But in this movie, his hair is actually a wig the entire time. This is pre-Hollywood only using wigs for hair.
Right.
He actually wore a wig for this movie because he was shooting this at the exact same time he was shooting Behind Enemy Lines.
You know what's crazy, too, when you think about it? This comedy team, you know, like when we think about Tropic Thunder, the time when they got both Tom Cruise and Robert Downey Jr. to do a dumb, dark, dirty comedy, like Robert Downey Jr. maybe wasn't at the peak of his career, but they were both like pretty high up there. That's some huge star value.
Tropic Thunder, Robert Downey Jr. had probably just wrapped Iron Man when he started filming. So like Iron Man wasn't a huge hit.
So he was blowing up.
Right.
And he was doing a lot of different things. Like, he got a lot of really good roles around that time, you know, writing.
He was doing Sherlock Holmes, Iron Man.
Right. He was really hot.
Jamie Foxx, Due Date. He was doing a ton of movies back to back to back.
He was really hot. And then Tom Cruise, of course, like the consummate movie star. Just, of course, we all know him, love him or hate him. He is what he is. And that is a huge star to have in a comedy.
Right. Well, and Ben Stiller has always been able to get big. He grew up in Hollywood. His parents are both famous.
Right. So it like speaks to their network and just how enjoyable these dumb comedies were to the public when they came out.
And what's interesting is one of the things that's interesting is Ben Stiller, because like you mentioned, his networking because of his parents and him being in Hollywood for so long. He started young. He had his TV show. He worked with a lot of actors. He did reality bites. So he had some dramatic chops. He had this, but he wrote almost all of these roles and cameos without actually even asking the people, and then pretty much everybody said yes. The only person he wrote a role for that didn't take it was Mugatu. Was originally supposed to be Andy Dick, but Andy Dick was filming some other movie and wasn't able to commit to a large role, so that's why he ended up just being the masseuse that one of our listeners brought up with the massage.
Right.
But like David Bowie, he wrote that cameo, and David Bowie agreed to do it. Like, which is awesome. He wrote the role specifically for Owen Wilson, and Owen Wilson made it work between shooting two movies at the exact same time.
Right.
So it's pretty impressive the star power that he had at this time. And this movie, I feel like what's interesting is apparently it didn't do well at the box office, but it is a classic. Everybody knows this movie, and this catapulted them even further, even if it wasn't necessarily a box office hit.
Right. And I think, I mean, of course, we're a little bit biased because we are the key demographic for that film.
Right.
When it came out, that's where we were. So I kind of feel like I'm biased, but now when you examine all of these things that were happening culturally and the stars attached to this, you're like, wow, okay, so people believed in this kind of comedy.
Right. And you also have to keep in mind this is the same year that Love Actually came out. So, you know, they were into having these big ensemble casts at the time as well.
Right.
One of the things that was actually interesting, I want to go back to the massage scene really quick, because one of our listeners pointed out that he was going to get a happy ending. That wasn't technically right. He was, massaging with these weird brooms.
Right.
But that scene originally apparently went much longer and would have made the movie rated R, so they had to cut it to make it PG-13. So maybe it did go into a happy ending.
I don't even want to know, like, what that day on set looks like.
Right.
God.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about any of like the highlights of the movie yet. So
no.
What do you want to talk? What are your favorite parts in the movie?
One of my favorite moments is David Duchovny plays this washed up hand model. He's got his perfect hand preserved in this weird like climate controlled glass
vacuum sealed
thing. It's his pride and joy, but the rest of him is looking a little rough. And, this was at the height of his popularity with The X-Files, and the few films that he was doing at the time, he was mostly playing, like, this heartthrob character. So we're used to the public seeing him as very attractive. And then in this, he smiles, and his teeth are just completely, like, rotted and disgusting.
He's got, like, really thinning hair and a PB beard.
And you only see a split second of it, and then it continues, and no one ever comments on it, which just makes it so much funnier. Well, but I think that's one of my favorite moments because I'm so obsessed with the X-Files.
Well, that whole scene is great because they set up this character to be, like, a deep throat kind of character,
right,
which is very much in line with his X-Files character.
It is.
But they set him up to be smarter because he's a hand model. Their minds are different than regular models. But even he still has some stupid tendencies. So there's a point when he calls Matilda, who's the reporter, and he says, like, pull on the sweater and the whole thing will unravel. She's like, don't you mean pull on the thread? And he's like, whatever. But he goes and he explains this whole plot where he goes, every assassination Every assassination over the last like 200 plus years has been because of the fashion industry. So they go back to Lincoln and they say, you know, he was killed by a model / actor because he was freeing the slaves. And of course that was going to make cotton and the powdered wigs get more expensive. And then it goes on to...
You know what's crazy though? Sorry, did you have a point?
Yes.
Okay.
I did. So this scene, this is one of my favorite scenes. So it basically goes and explains all the different assassinations. God damn, I can't say assassinations right now.
Do it French.
No.
Assassination.
So anyway, all these murders have been because of the fashion industry. And then he goes on to say because they're dumb, they're easily swayed and they can be manipulated and trained, but they're also peak human physical condition because they train, and then also because they're famous, they can get into anywhere. So they're the perfect assassins, right? So
somebody
Zoolander
thought of this movie when they were really high,
right? So I can tell you where the movie came from, but Derek, after having this whole explanation, he goes, "But why models?" And David Duchovny's character goes, "Really? I just explained that a moment ago." That was ad-libbed. Like, Ben Stiller actually forgot his line and just ad-libbed, but why Miles? But why male models? And that's when David Duchovny, he just, as a true professional, he just ad-libbed, I just explained that. And I think it's one of the best, I think it's one of the best jokes in the movie because it completely demonstrates the guy's point, and it was an accident.
Oh my God. No, honestly though, sometimes... I feel like I'm more likely to forget my line at the end of that comes right after someone else's monologue, because you start to forget
that you're ever gonna get a talk.
Well, you start thinking about like, oh darn it, what's my cue off of the end of this, and then you start questioning yourself because you have like too much time alone with your thoughts. I mean, of course you're listening to the other person in between, but while you're doing a scene, you're like thinking with several different brains. It's bizarre because there's like the technical brain that you got to be using.
Your lizard brain.
Making sure you hit your marks and you find your light and all these weird technical actory things. And then you've got the part of your brain that's listening to the other person and being in the moment and just like being present. And then, you know, so it's a lot of stuff on top of it. And if you haven't run your lines like a billion times, they're not going to be second nature the first few times you do the scene. It's not like theater where like you could do it in your sleep eventually. So yeah, that's pretty funny to hear about that.
Yeah, so that was a complete ad-lib. So the way the movie came about was apparently Ben Stiller makes a funny face when he brushes his hair, and his wife, I can't remember her name. I feel terrible. It's something Taylor, but she plays Matilda in this movie. And she made fun of his look, and so that became Blue Steel, Magnum, everything. So that look that he makes when he's getting dressed is what ultimately ended up being. Christine Taylor is his wife's name, who's in like all of his movies.
She's so nondescript.
Yeah.
With such a nondescript name.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Hey, she's consistently working though.
She is. That's exactly the spot where you want to be.
Right.
That's the spot I want to be. Like, I don't want anyone to be able to remember my name or exactly where they know me from if they see me in the grocery store. But I want to, like...
Work.
Right. But I guess I missed that boat because I can't just marry Ben Stiller.
Right. Or Judd Apatow.
Oh, that's like such a mean thing to say. I feel bad about saying that, but there has to be some truth to that.
There is some truth to it. Anyway, one of the things I appreciate, and we're talking about a lot of the dumb jokes, but there are also like these subtle jokes that are thrown in that I think are actually pretty clever and funny. So like one of them is during the brainwashing sequence where they're playing like Relax and, you know, showing them all the violent images and, you know, you got to kill the prime minister. And then there's just a random one that slips in, obey my dog kind of thing. Everything, which it's stupid, but it's just, I think it's hilarious. And then after he's embarrassed, he decides to retire from the model community. So he goes back to his like hometown in Pennsylvania, and his dad is John Voight, who works in a mine. His brother is Vince Vaughn, and his other brother is Judah Friedlander. And they're like coal miners, and so he wants to spend a day with them in the coal mine. And there's this montage of him being a jackass in the mine where he like is wearing way too nice of clothes. Surprise! He puts himself in like blackface and hides, and then right as his dad's about to hit the wall with the pickaxe, he jumps out.
It's so bad.
And you know, afterwards, this is one of the things I quote all the time. Anytime I have a cough, I go, "The black lung, Papa." So when one of the things that I really like is he's in the restroom at the bar. And he's cleaning off his face, getting the black makeup, and then you just see to the side, it just as he's walking out, it pans, and you just see a garbage can full of like 1,000 black cotton balls that he used to wipe his face off. Like, it doesn't linger on it at all. It's a very, you know, quick, you know, blink, you miss that joke.
There's so much fast stuff like
right, but I think it's one of those things that it's subtle and it's smart, and you would not see that in most movies. I think it's really clever, and I really appreciate that level of humor where they really are thinking about like just individual frames.
Right. God, and it's something this movie does so well. You have humor like that where it's a split second, and then you have the stuff that just goes on way too long and is so ridiculous and so stupid and so
like
over the top.
Like the walk-off?
Like the gasoline fight.
That's actually really fun. I still think that's funny.
I think it's hilarious when I watch it. Like, it goes on so long and it's so stupid, and you get to the point where you're like, I can't believe I'm still laughing at this, but it's still genuinely funny.
Right. Or when they're driving around like orange mocha frappuccinos, and it's just like jitterbug.
And then after that scene, he goes back to their shared apartment by himself because these three really stupid male models are his roommates. And you see that they sleep on bunk beds with their names at the top. And it's just for a split second that you see this, you're like, oh my god, they have bunk beds.
Yeah, it's super quick. One of the biggest scenes in this movie is the walk-off scene. So throughout the whole movie, Ben Stiller's character and Owen Wilson's character have like a feud because, you know, one's the professional model who's been around for a long time and one's the new and up and comer, and they both feel threatened by each other. So they run into each other at the bar and they just kind of like talk shit to each other. They just talk smack to each other. And, you know, Derek says something along the lines like, I'm sorry you didn't get the derelict campaign. And he goes, I don't know anything about it, but you can derelict my balls. And they just, you know, go back and forth, and then they do a walk-off, and David Bowie comes on. And all these other celebrities have had cameos, but none of them get like a little title card across the screen. But David Bowie gets a title card across the screen because he's going to be the ref for the walk-off. But even that scene went on a little too long. And then the ending is stupid where he rips off his underwear, and there's just no way you could do that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a stupid thing. So for every great joke and setup, you have that. But I also love how they kind of just make fun of a bunch of celebrities in this too. Like Fabio gets made fun of several times in this movie, where at the beginning of the movie, when they kind of explain what the movie is going to be, they need to find a dumb model. And they're like, what about Fabio? No, he's too smart. And then Fabio shows up at the awards and he wins for best actor / model. And he's just like, and I'm really proud that I've got an award for actor / model and not the other way around. And then Billy Zane shows up and he's like one of Derek's best friends, and he's like, don't do this walk off. He's so too young. He's going to beat you. He's like, put a cork in it, Zane. Like, Billy Zane had the classic good looks while he had hair. You would have thought he would have had this huge career, but he was always just like a sidekick. Like, he was the sidekick in Back to the Future, and he's kind of like a sidekick in this. And he does pop back up in Zoolander 2.
Right.
Which was awful. Which is another reason why I thought this was going to be bad.
there are just so many little moments in this that I still find
Breakdance
hilarious.
fighting.
And so many things that got funnier after the fact. Like the whole very early in the film, he's at the VH1 Fashion Awards. You're like, oh my god, the VH1 Fashion Awards were a thing. Are they still a thing? Did
I
they
have
cease
no
to
idea.
be a thing?
Well, and then you have Hansel's on like a Razor scooter, which is totally relevant for that time.
And all the cell phones were getting super small around that time, so Derek's cell phone is
like an inch big.
Right, which is hilarious because then pretty much right after that, cell phones just started getting bigger and bigger.
Well, and then there's also like really stupid jokes that are really funny. Like, this really is not okay, but it's super funny.
There's
but
so much stuff that's really not okay.
They end up right after doing the walk off. Christine Taylor's character, Matilda, basically tells Hansel, hey, we need to hide out with you because Derek's going to kill somebody and all these people are looking for him and you're the last place to go. And then they just become friends like that. And they have like an orgy and, you know, they make some bulimic jokes. You can read minds, which I think is hilarious still, the way they deliver it. Because
you can read minds.
They look so intense and everything. Like, it's a great scene. As she's pouring out her heart, talking about why she hates models because they made her feel terrible because she was chubby when she was a little girl. And then they just make that joke. And then they're just like, we throw up all the time. It's a great way to lose weight before a show. So it's very problematic. But then they kind of like have this plan to break into Maury's office, his agent, to steal the files from the computer. And Derek is like, I did all my own makeup when I was first starting out. I can make a disguise. And then they're just a black man and a Hispanic man. Like, it's not even them. I guess it's better than them putting them in like blackface or whatever. But like, you just see this black guy and a older Hispanic man walking around making their faces. And then you just see them wipe off their faces and it's them. And it's like,
it's hilarious.
But then they have a 2001 Space Odyssey kind of homage as they're like banging on the computer like the monkeys banging on the Citadel or the obelisk in 2001.
I also love that that's an iMac.
Yeah, which is totally of the time.
We all either had one or used one at a friend's house or
at a school.
Oh, I miss those computers. Those were fun. You know, the original models, the back was Velcro so they'd be easy to work on?
Yeah.
Like, that was part of the original appeal of Apple products or Mac products back in the day.
Well, and then they started soldering everything to the motherboard so you can't upgrade anything.
Yep, which was one of the best, smartest moves that they ever made as a company.
Well, and then everybody else started doing the same thing.
Exactly, they screwed us all over.
Like, no laptop has a removable battery anymore. It's like 4 or 5 batteries soldered to the motherboard, so you can't replace them.
So bad. All right, we digress.
Anyway.
We're not bitter about our lives being destroyed by corporations.
So you get to the end of the movie, and this is another kind of like, obviously they planned this very well, but during like the little montage where he's getting brainwashed, he has this thing like, don't be distracted by all the beautiful celebrities, and you see Fred Durst, you see Lance Bass, you see, I can't think, man, I'm doing terrible with names, Gary Shandling, and like a couple other celebrities as he's going through this fake runway while he's getting trained to kill the prime minister. And then when he's at the actual show, all the same celebrities show up and they make the exact same facial expressions, the exact same hand motions that they have in their little like photos that they have. Mm-hmm. And then you have the breakdance fight and you have the whole like relax. And then he turns left to stop a ninja star, which is absurd. And I love how like this movie is so self-aware because we see it throughout the movie. You see Derek making the same face for all his different looks. His calendar is literally the same picture with a different background, and the shirt is just photoshopped a different color, obviously. But in this, he turns left and does Magnum, and everyone's like, oh my god, it's beautiful. But it's the same look. He just turned left.
Right.
And it stops the ninja star. But you have Mugatu who points it out. He goes, I invented the piano key necktie. I wrote relax. He has one look. Am I taking crazy pills? So I love that like this is in a world where nobody like there's photographic evidence and nobody has ever noticed this except for him, and then they call it out, which I think is pretty funny.
Right.
Anything I feel like it's one of these movies where it's really hard to talk about because there's so many great one-liners and so many bits and visual gags.
Right. It's at the beginning of this wave of this specific absurdist humor, and yet it's also kind of at the tail end of just the non-PC humor.
Right.
Like where that moment that could have been blackface, which is something you only think about after you see a black actor instead of Ben Stiller playing Derek, that you kind of think about how it could have gone, and that's part of the humor of the moment.
Right.
And then you have stuff like Jerry Stiller's entire character, who is just so disgusting and vile and chauvinistic.
Right.
That, like, I don't even know if people are necessarily going to touch that kind of humor anymore. The level to which they took that specific
because
character.
that character is very similar to the character you brought up, Tom Cruise's character in Tropic Thunder.
Right, just disgusting.
But without the sexualizing and sexually harassing women in the workplace.
Right.
So, yeah, that definitely has come down a little bit. This is also on that tail end of almost being, because it's not technically a spoof, like it's not spoofing any movies, so it's not like Austin Powers where it's just, there's barely a story moving it forward, where it's just a bunch of stupid jokes.
Right.
Like this movie does have a plot, a little bit more of a plot that moves forward, so it's kind of right on that that cusp of being almost too ridiculous to talk about.
A plot which, despite the fact that I watched this movie so many times that I basically memorized the script, a plot that I completely forgot about.
Really?
I did not remember the plot of this movie at all.
That's funny.
And it's kind of interesting, too, because the plot is something that's so relevant today. Like, the fashion industry is finally starting to take heat from people, and it's hilarious that they were talking about how it pollutes and how it marginalizes already impoverished populations further, and the impact of our fast fashion is poisoning the earth. And it was something that people honestly didn't even really know that much about back then. Like, the plot of this is super woke, and I feel like people just kind of glossed over that and didn't realize, oh yeah, this is true. Well, this is like, they didn't see the magnitude of the situation that they're talking about in this stupid comedy.
Well, also you have to keep in mind, 2001, not everybody was on the internet all the time. Like, this is still dial-up time, so we didn't have easy access to information like we do now.
It's just crazy to look at things like that, and it makes you realize how different our lives and our world were at this point in time.
Right.
Because it feels so recent, you know, because we were moving into our teens and like...
Yeah, absolutely.
We're in our 30s now, but it doesn't feel that long ago, but it is so different.
Yeah, it's a different world, and I think that was why the second movie, because the second movie borrowed so much from this one, why it wasn't very good. It felt really dated, and that's why I was kind of worried about this one. But it is a drastically different world.
Wait, so you recently watched just the second one?
We watched the second one last year.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it wasn't good. It was awful.
Who made that choice?
We both wanted to watch it.
We're stupid.
It was very bad. It was an awful film.
I don't even feel sorry for us, because why would you watch that again?
Oh, I would never watch it again. It was bad, but this movie, believe it or not, was actually banned. Actually, still banned in Malaysia.
What?
Because the whole plot centers around killing the Malaysian prime minister.
Oh my god!
So yeah, and it was also banned in Singapore, but it's no longer banned there. But it was.
Oh, see, now I feel kind of bad, because it's like, it's kind of like your kid's in a schoolyard, and America made a really funny joke, but because of the language barrier, Malaysia just feels attacked.
Right, even though like the Prime Minister of Malaysia is the hero.
Right, no, absolutely. It's something that is very unique to language barriers.
Which, I mean, and that makes sense. Like, almost every movie that comes out has different names in different countries to
But I can see how this just would not translate at all.
Right.
This type of humor.
Right, and it's not like, you know, the interview from Seth Rogen and James Franco where they actively wanted to kill... They were going to kill an actual world leader, whether or not we respect that world leader or not. Like, it is still technically a world leader, and I can see why North Korea was pissed and hacked Sony over this. Right.
There's a difference between the figurehead being a character, or the office being a character, and the actual person being a character. But, you know, it also... It's something I think a lot of people don't think about as well. Because I'm Latina, you know, my parents are mostly like Mexican and Puerto Rican, and there's something about the culture that so many Latinos come from where sarcasm isn't necessarily used as much. So if you try and use sarcastic humor with my mom, for instance, it's like it kind of depends on the day of the week if she thinks it's funny or not. Like, I think she gets it, but she doesn't really think it's that funny. If you use sarcasm around my grandmother, it's just confusing. She has no idea what's going on.
Oh, she has no idea.
She has no idea. Like, she just doesn't get sarcasm,
at
usually.
All.
Not really.
And that's her age. That's, a different time. But then also, her...
I don't think it's a language thing. I think it's a cultural thing.
Right. So do you have anything else to talk about? I feel like, realistically, this is a movie that is difficult to talk about because it's just so quotable, and we don't want to sit here and just read quotes from the movie all day.
Right. I had such low expectations for this, and I came out of it still loving this movie. Like, I would genuinely watch this again later this year and probably wouldn't be bored out of my mind. Like, some things get a little older after you revisit them.
Right.
But this holds up, and I get that nice little bit of nostalgia, that feel-good nostalgia.
I'm surprised, actually. I went into this thinking I was going to hate it. Even as we were watching it, and I was like, as soon as I saw Donald Trump, I was just like, oh, God.
I thought it was too gross to still feel warm and fuzzy.
Right. And I don't necessarily know if I feel warm and fuzzy about it.
But it's also a little sad in certain ways,
Right.
Because the world is so different and things are so much more difficult.
Right.
It's a little sad, but it's a little bit good.
Just the fact that it was so quotable still, and then I'd noticed these, I definitely noticed, the cotton ball thing before, but, there are some gems in this movie still.
Right. It's worth watching again.
Right. And, and just like I said, these little throwaway lines, like him telling Billy Zane to shut up, I just found hilarious. And then also it's like looking at a time capsule. It's
like when I turn on Aqua really loud and blast their first album. I know it's not objectively good, but I really love it.
Right. Well, I just love the fact that you saw Gwen Stefani and Gavin Rossdale together. That's not a thing anymore.
God.
And it hasn't been for a long time. So it's and then Lance Bass being relevant.
And you're like, oh, Fred Durst existed.
Right. It's just like these are people who are not relevant anymore. So it really is just looking, it's like looking back at that exact year in our childhood.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it is exactly, and it's not necessarily a good movie. Visually, it's interesting. There's a lot of weird colors, and they do a lot with it. Oh, the one other thing that I liked, at the end of the movie when Zoolander and Matilda kiss for the first time,
mm-hmm.
he has his derelict makeup and he has black lipstick, and they kiss, and then you pull away and she just has black makeup smeared across her face, which is once again, it's another little subtle thing. You blink and you miss it. It's only on screen for about a second.
Right.
And it's, obviously that would happen if you were making out with somebody who has black lipstick, but
I'm reminded that there was a time when comedy being really high budget and really well done was exciting,
right,
for audiences.
And I think we kind of hit it on the head earlier. This was a time where, 2001, World Trade Center was super fresh, and having comedies is really what we needed at the time.
Yeah.
Everything was more lighthearted. Spider-Man got re-edited to be lighthearted,
yeah.
And having this pro-New York thing.
That specific scene had to be cut,
exactly.
too.
And then we had a lot more comedies, and we didn't really have any dark movies until we really got into 2008.
Mm-hmm.
You started getting the Dark Knight, and you had that was dark for a big public blockbuster movie. And then we started getting the gritty reboots of everything, and we started getting you're actually getting these grisly war movies. So yeah, it's definitely of the time.
Yep.
All right, so what are we going to be covering next episode?
I have no idea.
Really?
What are we doing?
We're hopefully we're going to have a guest on the next episode.
Oh, how about you tell us about it,
So
Michael?
we're hoping, we're not, Dustin has a kid. But Dustin, who was on our Sandlot episode, he was obviously a host of Remake Rewind for a long time. We're hoping we're going to be able to make time, or he's going to be able to make time and watch Bill and Ted with us.
Ooh.
So Bill and Ted, they're
That'll
making
be fun.
A third movie right now.
Dustin's hilarious.
He's good people. So hopefully he'll be on. If not, we're still going to talk about Bill and Ted, and it's going to be great.
Fingers crossed for a great sleeping week for his toddler.
Yep. Anyway, where can our listeners find you?
I'm all over the internet at Katrina Ossity. Check out
our
my YouTube.
Check out our YouTube. Oh, a new thing that's starting with this episode. All of our old episodes will be on the platform, but this episode will be a bonus episode on Podcoin. So Podcoin is a new platform for podcasts where you actually get paid to listen to podcasts.
Amazing.
So it's pretty cool. You do have to listen to a ton, but if you're listening to podcasts
though.
anyway,
Right.
You might as well. So this episode, once it gets approved, which it will be, there will be, you get 1.5 times the coins. And you can redeem those for like Amazon gift cards.
It's not a lot of scratch, but it kind of becomes a hobby. Like if you're stuck with a long commute and you're listening anyway,
you might as well listen on this Podcoin app.
It makes it more fun.
Yeah, and you get something over time. You can use code REWIND on there, and you can actually get a bonus 300 coins on your first listen. So go ahead and download the Podcoin app. It is on Android and iOS. When you go to sign up for it, use the invite code REWIND, and you'll get 300 bonus points.
Rewind.
Rewind, REWIND.
What's the app called again?
Podcoin, PODCOIN.
Podcoin.
Podcoin, iOS, Android. Thank you guys for listening. Check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com. You can also check us out on Twitter and Instagram at MDXpods. We're also on Facebook. Instagram's pretty much where all of our daily updates are, so check that out. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.